Welcome to the second of two screencasts looking at exam skills for the Youth Culture section at the SY1 A Sociology exam. So in the previous screencast we looked at how you go about answering the 15-mark question, and in this screencast we're going to focus on the longer question, which is the 30-mark question, which is actually worth 50% of the marks available for the SY1 paper in total. And as time management works out as a minute a mark, you should spend half an hour on this section of the SY1 paper. So whereas the 15-mark question was essentially a mini essay question, this 30-mark question requires a longer essay. And in sociology, there are three main types of longer essay questions, as we can see on the screen at the moment. But on the SY1 paper, the longer question type that they tend to ask is this first type. So the question, the 30-mark question, tends to be a longer essay question that asks you to evaluate a sociological claim. So if we look at the examples of 30-mark questions that we can see on the screen at the moment, although they're worded slightly differently, they're all requiring you to look at the arguments and evidence for and against a particular viewpoint. That is, I think, most obvious if we look at the first two questions, where the command is to assess a view, but in this third question, where the command word is discuss, you would still set out the arguments for and against the view that youth culture is deviant, and in this last question, which asks you to what extent is membership of youth culture the norm for young people, you would still set out that answer by looking at the arguments for and against that particular viewpoint. Now, I've provided very detailed guidance on how to answer this type of longer essay question within this screencast on essay writing. And you can easily find this video within the exam and study skills playlist on my YouTube channel, so make sure that you've watched this particular video before you attempt any 30-mark question for the youth culture section. So once you've watched that screencast on essay writing, you'll be familiar with this four-part essay structure and this peel approach to paragraphing. So let's apply these skills to the youth culture section. So what I would like you to do next is to hit the pause button, have a think about this particular question, so assess the view that females have little involvement in youth cultures, and I'd like you to see whether or not you can identify two or three arguments that support the view that females have little involvement in youth cultures, and then two or three arguments that go against that particular view. And for each point that you identify, see if you can link it to either a piece of sociological evidence or a theoretical argument. So hit the pause button and see if you can identify some relevant points. So let's start by looking at some of the points that you could use to support the view that females have little involvement in youth cultures. So first of all, we've got the argument that in the past, spectacular youth subcultures often had an overtly masculine style, and therefore the rate of participation by girls was much lower. And we could use the classic research, the Marxist influence research of the CCCS to support that in terms of evidence. Secondly, we've got this idea that girls have had fewer opportunities to participate in youth cultures because of the way in which they've been controlled by the family. And we could link that perhaps to theoretical arguments that feminists would make about patriarchy in the family. And then finally, we could also make the argument that there are perhaps fewer role models for girls in terms of youth cultures. Now remember, with these 30-mark questions, it's never enough to simply agree with the view in the question. You've got to look at the arguments against the view and use evidence and theoretical arguments to challenge that viewpoint. So with this question, we could of course draw upon the work of McRober and Garber and talk about the bedroom culture, this female youth subculture that they believed had been overlooked by male researchers. We could talk about the significant role that women did play in some of the spectacular youth subcultures, such as the punk movement, and make the argument that their contribution was overlooked. And we could also talk about how the position of women has changed in society, and that as women have more economic and social opportunities, they now have more opportunities to participate in youth cultures. Let's focus now just on one of those points. So let's have a look at this argument that girls have had fewer opportunities to participate in youth cultures because of the way in which they've been controlled within the family. What I'd like you to do in a moment is hit the pause button again, and I want you to develop this particular argument using the Peel approach to paragraphing. So this is the point that the paragraph is going to make, but your job is to explain and develop that point more fully, link it to some evidence or some theoretical arguments, try to evaluate that point, and make sure that you've got a sentence that clearly links this point back to the question set. So hit the pause button, have a go at writing a Peel paragraph based on this particular point. And now compare the paragraph that you've just written with the model paragraph that you can see on the screen at the moment, which is colour-coded according to this Peel approach. So here we've got the initial sentence that identifies the argument that this paragraph is going to make, and then this point is developed and explained much more fully, and it's linked to theoretical arguments that feminist sociologists make about patriarchy. Here we've got a sentence that clearly links this argument back to the claim in the question, and then at the end of the paragraph we've got some explicit evaluation drawing upon the work of McRobbie. So this last point is evaluative because it's challenging the extent to which these types of arguments are still relevant. And notice that we got plenty of good sociological knowledge within this paragraph. So we've got use of a theory with reference to feminism and this concept of a patriarchal society, and we've also got reference to sociological research with the work of McRobbie. Now, one of the things that I tried to stress in all of the exam skills screencasts is the importance of understanding the success criteria. And for sociology essays, this grid that you can see on the top of the screen gives you a good indication of the types of things that examiners are looking for. And in order to get into the top mark band for both knowledge and analysis and evaluation on this 30-mark question, and this is the mark scheme that they will use, what you've got to provide in your answer is good evidence of most of the things that you can see listed in this table. So it's really important that you can back up your arguments with reference to sociological evidence, theoretical concepts and arguments, and that's why the Quizlet flashcards that I've created on keywords and key studies should be an important part of your revision. We're going to finish this screencast by looking at a whole answer to this particular 30-mark question. Assess the view that spectacular youth cultures are a thing of the past. So hit the pause button and have a read through the first 3 paragraphs of this particular answer. So the first paragraph, we've got a reasonably clear and accurate introduction that demonstrates knowledge and understanding, and also this candidate is able to make a connection between the view stated in the question and a theoretical perspective. So we've got reference to postmodernism. Remember, one of the things that you should be thinking about when you decode a question is whether or not there's a theory or a sociological debate that lies behind the question. Now, with this second paragraph, we've got a point that's identified, we've got development explanation of that point with examples, we've got some explicit evaluation, we've got a counter-argument at the end of the paragraph. It's nearly a really good example of the pill approach to paragraphing that we modelled earlier. However, what is lacking really is a linking sentence. So this paragraph could be improved if the candidate made a more explicit link to the debate, stating what this evidence that they present in the paragraph suggests about spectacular youth cultures being a thing of the past. So it's the linking element of the pill approach to paragraphing that is missing in this second paragraph. And the third paragraph makes good points and utilises evidence and key terminology very effectively. So we've got reference to key sociological terms like this concept of a media saturated society, reference to this concept of a supermarket of style, and we've got reference to key sociologists in this particular paragraph. So there's good knowledge within this particular section of the essay. This fourth paragraph perhaps lacks a little bit of clarity. So there are some points here that are potentially very good and quite sophisticated that need to be explained a bit more clearly and linked a bit better to the question. But there is some good analysis within this paragraph. And then this final paragraph tries to sum up the discussion and come to a conclusion about spectacular youth cultures, and the point about definitions is a good one, and the critical speculative tone of the conclusion is an effective end to the essay. And overall, this answer in the exam received 27 marks out of 30, which means that we're looking at a grade A response.